Players have been waiting for this massive Guilty Gear update for a long time, and in this video I'm going to go through the changes, because to be honest, they made a ton of changes in this patch. I mean, look at how many changes the devs list in these patch notes. Overwhelming, right? So rather than doing a full before and after and going through each individual change, I really want to go over what I think are the most important changes and what these changes actually mean. And to do that, I first have to talk a little bit about what has happened with this game over the past couple of seasons. A couple of weeks ago, I posted a video about Wild Assault, a mechanic that was added in Guilty Gear Strive Season 3 that they fully removed in this big patch. Wild Assault was a very controversial mechanic, and I think it alone kind of represents what happened to the game over these past 2 years. The game had become quite explosive, as characters had additional conversion ability, new moves, new follow-ups, and better ways to route to powerful situations quickly. It got to the point that sometimes one situation could define the entire round, and at its worst, powerful snowball situations existed for many characters. For example, looping 50/50s backed by burst lockout, so you can't get out of the combo, along with passive resource generation that made it almost impossible to reverse the situation. Or a character guessing right on defense like one time and then snowballing the game. Things like that. Over time there have been many buffs, nerfs, system changes, just things to try to mitigate the explosiveness of the game, but 2.0 aims to be more of a reset point. In fact, in the patch notes, the devs themselves say that some of the changes they make might seem kind of restrictive or aggressive in nature, but a lot of players are looking at this as kind of like where the new baseline for the game should be. So, how did the devs go about this? Well, we can start with the aforementioned Wild Assault, which got removed. As a quick breakdown, there are 3 types of Wild Assaults: red, white, and blue, and for a long time the red version was considered to be the most powerful. Red Wild Assault both extended combos in spots that you couldn't normally, but also gave combos to starters that are not necessarily associated with big combos. An example would be Mei, is what I would say. You know, people usually use Mei as an example, so I want to use another character as an example, Testament. As a quick side note too, anytime you see the new stage, this is Jam stage in Strive 2.0, the game is Strive 2.0. If you see the traditional-ish tournament stage, Council of 3, the gray stage, you can also tell because there's a pretty big difference between UIs in the 2 versions. Anyway, we're going to use Testament as the example here. Testament has a big far slash, but they generally have problems converting it on normal hit. On counter hit, Testament can convert using things like Arbiter Sign or 2H, or even a new mechanic, Counter Blitz. But on normal hit, you either have to spend resource or set up a fireball, and that's pretty much it. With Wild Assault, they can convert the far slash into a rewarding combo in a spot you would not expect most characters to get a big reward. Another method players really liked to use to maintain advantage was purple Roman cancel. Now, Guilty Gear Strive has a robust meter system using Roman cancel, Guilty Gear's signature mechanic. And in Strive, there are 4 types: red, blue, yellow, and purple. Red is the standard old school Roman cancel, and you can do it by putting your opponent in hit stun or block stun. Blue Roman cancel has the most slowdown, but the player performing it needs to be in a neutral state, so you can't really do it from attacking normally. You have to do some action that puts you in neutral, so either a dash cancel or a jump cancel, or you just do it. Yellow Roman cancel is the guard cancel of the game, and you can use this on defense to turn the tables. And this leaves us with purple, a way to spend meter when you whiff an attack. Now this sounds minor, but purple Roman cancel actually has a lot of powerful applications. And to begin, we must talk about probably the biggest nerf to purple Roman cancel: throw with reaction PRC. The change here is that you can no longer whiff a throw and then cover yourself with PRC, and this has major implications for both offense and defense. Offensively, there are just a lot of characters that strike throw in this game, so not just command grab characters, but also normal guy characters like Giovanna or Soul. When these characters had 50 meter, the purple Roman cancel was a powerful hedge in the case that the throw whiffed, aka they were wrong. Typically, players would use fast purple Roman cancel, so canceling the purple roaming cancel with a normal, which resulted in a lower meter penalty, which means not only do they get to keep their offensive situation, but usually they could go right back to rushdown. Defensively, there was a powerful option select, as in using one series of inputs to cover multiple outcomes, using throw tech and purple roman cancel. Even though throws are fast in this game, the window to tech throws is actually pretty big at 10 frames. When you break a throw, you can't really do anything, you just break it. So by trying to break the throw a little late and then doing PRC if you don't see yourself reject a throw. In the case that you just break the throw, you keep the meter because you can't do anything else. But in the case your throw whiffs, you can purple roman cancel and protect yourself. Both of these are removed at the same time because of this change. Something else players really like to do to keep the resources flowing is building a strategy for their character around breaking the wall with a super and using positive bonus. In fact, quite a few characters had break the wall with super as one of their main win conditions. There are two big changes here that affect this, and one of them requires understanding a pretty important, relatively fundamental idea in fighting games in general. In many fighting games that have meter, when you spend it, there's generally a penalty to it. And what games typically do is they will either make it so there's a short amount of time before you can build the resource again, or they make it so the opponent has to not be in hit stun or block stun first before you can build the resource again. This thing is a product of developers just learning their lessons from the past. Now, these tactics started going really crazy in Season 3 because of Wild Assault, but even before then, there were some characters who would aim to break the wall with super in order to get around this restriction. One of the major buffs positive bonus gives to a player is not just passive meter gain, but also a dramatic reduction in meter penalty, a 90% one in fact. In Strive 2.0, if you break the wall with a super, this super actually has the standard meter penalty that it would have normally. So choosing how you break the wall is important because there's 3 ways to do it right now. The 2 you see the most is the standard wall break that returns the players to a neutral state, and the wall break done by performing a super that causes a hard knockdown. But there's also the knockdown after charge dust that gives positive bonus plus a slightly weaker knockdown. So for instance, rather than punishing a meterless reversal with a close slash into wall break super, there could be times where you pick charge dust instead, so you get a knockdown along with all the benefits of positive bonus. Wall breaking with a super is very common in this game, and generally characters with supers that refund character specific resources really benefit from breaking the wall like this. So they really feel this change. But I did mention 2 changes that affected breaking the wall, and funny enough, the second change involves purposely not breaking the wall. This is called the wall slump. In the previous version of the game, and really since the game came out, when you do a combo into a wall break, the last hit before the wall break splats the opponent on the wall. After one more hit, either a standard attack or a super, you will break the wall. Now, if you do a combo in a way so that the opponent is not airborne, but can be wall broken, they will kind of like slide down on the wall and slump like this. So when the opponent is airborne, if you wait for a bit, they can pop off the wall, like up, down, forward, whatever. But if they slump, they kind of just slump on the wall, and then they like stand up after a little while. So there are characters like Eno, Happy Chaos, and others who could set this up relatively easily, and the tactic here was to use this advantage to loop mix-ups until you build 50 meter and then break the wall with super. In Season 3, they attempted to make this weaker by giving the defender more burst every time you did a wall stick, which obviously affects the wall slump, but even then, players still use this tactic. In Strive 2.0, they made it so even in this situation, you don't slump, you can choose to fly off the wall. And this prevents this looping strategy. Another group of major changes to Strive 2.0 involves the damage in Guilty Gear Strive being too high. Over the years, there have been many changes to this game to try to reduce the damage. Change to the guard bar system, changes to combo scaling, changes to weight, character defense modifiers. They tried a lot of stuff. In this update, they tried even more to lower the damage. If you're curious on why players have been harping on the devs to lower the damage, well, frankly, first, it just sucks to feel like you instantly die for messing up one time. Like, straight up get TOD'd or like close. This is a multiplayer game, you know, and not a single player game. Although you might be surprised to hear that depending on what character you're watching. But vibes aside, lowering the overall damage or reducing the opportunities for hits into big combos, unless the player has taken a meaningful risk or big read, just means that two players can interact more with each other. The first place we need to start to look at how Strife 2.0 does this is with Purple Roaming Cancel again. If a player is not already taking damage, Purple Roaming Cancel has both reduced damage and tension gain for 60 frames, so an entire second. And you might hear this and be like, so how does this lower the damage? Well, there are quite a few tactics that use Purple Roaming Cancel for tricky offense and mix-ups. For example, with Potemkin, he has this move, Hammerfall, a big attack with armor. Notable, of course, is he cannot run, so moving with Hammerfall and its cancel, Hammerfall Break, is a pretty crucial part of playing Potemkin. Normally, this move is super punishable on block, and on whiff, he's just like, I don't know, he's just like there, you know what I'm saying? But with meter, he gets a bunch of powerful tactics. For example, he can cancel the Hammerfall with fast PRC into Potemkin Buster, his signature move. Potemkin Buster is a disjoint as well, so even if you know it's coming, you might not necessarily be able to jab him before he hits you with this. Or another tactic with Potemkin is using a slow reactable move, something like Garda Impact, and again using fast Purple Roaming Cancel to cancel it before the Garda Impact actually connects, and then you pop Buster them. While these tactics are still available, with the PRC change, both the damage reward and the subsequent meter refund are reduced by a pretty good amount by this change. Another method involves somewhat common methods of getting hit. A standout one would involve kind of famous lunging low profile attacks, so we're talking like Mei's 3K or even more well known Kai's Stun Dipper. And these moves got nerfed by changing the damage scaling so that combos that start with the attack do less damage and can't be pushed as far. These attacks often got big return with meter and were generally quite good, quite rewarding combo starters. For highs and lows, despite how this appears, for highs and lows, these also got additional scaling as well, but not as extreme as the low profile lunging attacks. But these are not the only attacks that have gotten surprising damage reductions. A surprising one for a lot of people might be projectiles. These have the same damage scaling as low profile lunging attacks. Punches also got hit by this. It is generally expected that you don't get a big combo off punches. Some characters like Dizzy really struggle to do a big combo off mashing 2P, where other characters can get a little damage into knockdown pretty easily. However, return off standing jabs could be pretty high depending on your character. Scaling alone is not how they're targeting damage in this patch either. Most of the crazy high damage clips from GGST come from big counter hits, as counter hits cause a 10% increase in the attack that caused the counter hit. This was removed not just from counter hits in general, but also in the case of having a full guard bar risk. This was removed as well. The full risk gauge is not that common anymore since they changed how risks work again in the most recent patch, but it definitely comes up every now and then. The last major way they targeted the overall damage of the game is with a change that does not affect the entire cast, but this does actually affect many characters, and it happened on this wall bounce, and it was changed so that the longer the combo, the weaker the wall bounce becomes. The next couple of universal system changes I want to talk about are quite subtle, but very common complaints from high-level players of the game. And to be honest, even if you don't know about this specifically, you've probably felt the impact of these things while playing. And I'm referring to something like this. I'm using Baiken as an example here, as it's the easiest example I could quickly think of. Previously, when you're performing a combo, your opponent gains meter and burst for the duration of the combo. Short combos or good combo starters would result in less burst and meter for the opponent. But in the case that either your combo goes for too long or the starter is very scaled, you would progressively give your opponents more and more meter and burst. In this example then, the reason why my opponent is building so much burst and meter is that the throw combo starter is pretty bad from a scaling perspective, and as such, you give your opponent a lot of meter and burst. At a glance, you wouldn't think this is actually such a big deal. Getting resource back because of a particularly long combo seems pretty fair. But the reason why high level players despise this so much in this game is because it disproportionately helped big body characters who were already really powerful. Tension, frankly, is just really valuable. I mean, I just spent a bunch of the time in this video talking about how they nerfed a bunch of uses for meter spend, right? And burst, simply put, is your combo breaker, and previously was also associated with the powerful wild assault mechanic. So having more HP not only gave you more access to it, but also means you could use these mechanics more aggressively. Putting a cap on this preemptively is a good idea, and to be honest, if the game is going to have more interactions, there should be more opportunities to spend the meter anyways at some point. The other, and to be honest, much less subtle universal technique around meter involves backdash. And this one you don't really see until higher levels of play. The developers removed the ability to roaming cancel during backdash. And specifically, they're targeting something called backdash BRC. This is another meter technique that you can use both offensively and defensively. On offense, there were a couple of pretty strong applications, and the flashiest one by far is definitely the fast BRC overhead, a way of doing a very fast overhead right in someone's face. Now, everyone does have a 5D, a fast universal overhead, but the advantage of doing the fast BRC overhead was not only that it was straight up faster, but also, once again, it has negligible meter penalty, meaning that the player who performed it could quickly regenerate resources, especially if the overhead connected. There were many ways to perform this technique, but it has been removed as a consequence of not being able to RC out of your backdash. The other situation comes from when the attacker is slightly disadvantageous on block. In this case, you could backdash after with invincibility, and then use the long slowdown of BRC to drift towards the opponent, either hitting their attempt to take their turn or making them block and potentially getting a 50-50. Again, since it's BRC, you also get the benefit of quickly refunding your resources. Since you are no longer able to RC out of a backdash, you are no longer able to perform this technique either. You could similarly do this on defense to assess the situation and counter or even get a mix-up. Personally, I thought the overhead was cool, and I'm wondering what people will do in order to compensate for this tactic being removed, because it was pretty strong with many characters in the game. And while we're on the topic of defense, let's talk about the changes to reversals in this patch. Meterless reversals are and were quite powerful in GGST, and in fact, some characters in the past used to get mix-ups on block from their reversals thanks to their ability to cancel their meterless reversals into red roaming cancel. This was removed a while ago. In this version, these reversals received a further nerf. For starters, they are far more punishable on block than before, and on hit, they return the opponent to neutral, even in the case that they would have gotten a counter hit previously. In the previous version, they were pretty punishable already, but there were a couple of reversals, like Chips, for example, that are slightly more advantageous on block, which means he couldn't be punished by Charged Dust, as opposed to now, where it's quite easy to do. Remember earlier when I mentioned there was 3 different ways to break the wall? Well, it's a major factor here. Charged Dust was already the best way to punish reversal like these, and now you can do it to all of them. They are really punishable too, so even reversals that were annoying to punish, like Unica's 2-hit DP, are much easier to punish now. To be honest, when I was recording the footage in the previous patch, it actually took me an embarrassing amount of tries to actually punish Unica's DP with Dust. The other nerf to reversals comes from meter reversals, and I was pretty surprised by this one, to be honest. For starters, you can no longer use the super PRC technique. This was a technique that has been around for years, and by using purple roaming cancel, you could cancel the super on startup, but carry over the invincibility frames. This was quite useful for characters with slower startup supers, since it was generally easier for the attacker to deal with them on knockdowns. But it was changed in the previous patch to only be available with full meter, 100 meter. In this patch, it is completely gone. Players also cannot red roaming cancel supers either on block or hit, and this has a couple of effects. Generally, people use this to keep their offense up if they're wrong on the guess, but also supers are powerful high damage combo starters. This also takes away that powerful return. Almost every single character in the game has a reversal super, so this is a pretty huge change. Next, I want to talk about changes to character hurt boxes. So the developers split the characters into two groups: large characters like Potemkin, Nago, Faust, Goldlewis, and everyone else. If you talk to a high level player of the game, there's probably some character in previous versions where they're like, dude, we just can't do a combo to this character. For Baiken, Anji is really annoying to combo. There are some other small notes on characters. So for example, apparently Kai was randomly smaller than other characters while backdashing, and there are quite a few of these changes across the cast. And finally, the last round of relatively sweeping, super important changes that affect basically all the characters are changes to attacks themselves. I know this sounds weird, but the developers targeted specific types of attacks that many characters had for changes. First off, the most clear one that many people feel right away would be the removal of the fastest attacks in the game, the 4-frame jabs. For some characters, it's kind of a whatever change, as they couldn't usually get a combo off theirs, like Giovanna, but in other cases, this is a character-defining nerf. As previously, Abba's 2P could reliably combo into hard knockdowns. The next point comes from 6P. This move is the universal anti-air of the game, but because of how hitboxes actually work in GG, they actually act as pokes as well, and in some cases, even defensive options. So essentially, in Guilty Gear, if a move is upper body invincible, that means there's just straight up nothing to hit here. This means while someone is rushing you down, there are spots where you could potentially 6P to reverse the situation. The thing is though, that since the game has come out, different characters have had different speeds of when the upper body invincibility actually activates. This makes it so some characters legitimately cannot use their 6Ps to escape some situations. These are not universal, so in the case that one character can 6P out of a string, the entire cast can 6P out of a string. And if one character cannot 6P out of a string, nobody can. Another sweeping change that the developers made to attacks would be specific hitboxes used in combos only. To truth be told, they kind of explained this a little bit of an odd way, but essentially they explained that there are times in the past that they would change a move so that it would be better to use in combos, but it would also have the consequence of being better in neutral as well. So now there's a new like follow-up hitbox that only happens when the opponent is blocking or getting hit. But this change I feel like actually ties into universal changes to two types of attacks. And for starters, it would be close slash. Almost universally advantageous, this button is good both in pressure, it usually extends combos in different ways for people, and is a powerful combo starter. Now, a lot of characters had other applications for close slash, and usually as a proximity anti-air, so an anti-air that you use when someone is close to you or like right above you. And as an anti-air, it's conceptually quite powerful. It's a high damage starter that's also advantageous, that also has low recovery. But in this update in general, close slash anti-air is much weaker, and the only way you'd even get close slash to hit this high is when the opponent is in hit stun only. No matter what I do, I will not be able to use it from super high. And this also lowers the damage a little bit because most characters don't actually get really huge combos off things like jab and 6P compared to close slash. The other major hitbox change requires us to actually go back again and to talk about low profiles, but not the lunging lows that we talked about before, specifically kicks. There are a spread of these. Some have a little bit of low profile, some are basically you're just lying flat on the ground and no one can hit you. Simply put, these have been removed. Okay. That was a lot of stuff. So what does this actually mean for the game? Well, many of these changes target damage, especially easily accessible, hard to counter opportunities for damage. It's not that these situations had no counterplay, but it really was that it could be pretty difficult unless you were a very advanced player of the game. The close slash anti-air earlier is a prime example, so different characters had different responses to this, but it was a pretty easy, pretty powerful tactic to abuse. I feel like pretty easy, really hard to counter is a really big theme of all of these super wide system and all character changes. I feel like purple roaming cancel is a really good example because I think if you ask most competitive players, hey, are you really sweating PRC? they would just kind of like shrug their shoulders outside of really powerful examples like the Potemkin examples I showed earlier. And I'm personally really surprised they made the purple Roman cancel damage change, where both the scaling and the meter penalty is huge when you PRC outside of combos. Damage reductions across the board mean more opportunities for interactions between two players, which I think is something pretty much everyone wants. Most of the reductions and scalings come from powerful starters that could end games or turn around games really quickly. The tools still end up being pretty good, just not like game defining. Some of these hitbox standardizations too also, I feel like, harken back to how the devs talked about the game on launch, when they were really trying to focus on making sure all moves had specific uses and you picked the right move for the right situation. While again, close slash is a huge standout here, there were plenty of powerful tactics with both lunging moves and low lunging moves and low profiles and all sorts of things that people use in combination with meter. Again, the theme of really good, really easy, hard to counter. In the short term, it does homogenize the characters more, but if this is really supposed to be like a new baseline for characters, they can go a new direction with characters, which I find that, might be pretty cool in the future. And we saw this, for example, in Season 4, how they tried to make all the characters really unique, and I did think they actually did a good job of that. Just they went a little too far. The game was kind of crazy. Now, I didn't go through all of the system changes, just the ones that have the most impact on the game. There's some that only affect a couple of characters, or they're like very niche stuff that can happen in a match, but stuff that many players would not even know was in the game. But yeah, that was a lot. Originally, I was going to do a before after video, but just while I was writing this video, I was like, damn, I am about to write a novel and I should sell it on Amazon or something because this patch is so huge and has so many changes. So my plan is I'm going to play the game for a few days, and then I'm going to try to do this type of video with characters as well. And I think doing that will help explain what actually happened to the cast. And right now the cast has 33 characters, so there's a lot going on with this game. As usual, if you have any questions or comments, definitely feel free to leave them in the comment section below. If you want to help support the channel, you can join my Patreon. I have a free Patreon with free videos every week, and also early access content and behind the scenes stuff for paying members. And if you're interested in Guilty Gear coaching, I do that over on metafy.gg/LordKnight. I stream on most days, so if you're watching this, I probably am streaming right now, maybe, on twitch.tv/LordKnight or on YouTube. I also stream on YouTube as well. And we hang out, practice, talk about the game, talk about fighting games, and also make content for my second channel, LordKnight Chronicles. Like and subscribe if you guys feel like it. I'll see y'all next time. Peace out.